Well, let's go into our program because today, as many times when we have our program on Thursday, something in the early part of the week
Happens.
turns on the light bulb, and then we have a program.
Right, right. There's always a backlog of material I can fall back on. But when something just walks in surprisingly, then that makes us something that we want to share right away. And this is what has happened this week. We have had so little material on World War One. The records are hard to come by. And so we have just asked everywhere to get them. And we haven't been able to get very many of the soldiers who went in World War One. I have searched all of the early newspaper files, the microfilm, and I can find announcements of things that happened, but they don't give the names of the men involved in most cases. And I knew that my brother was in the first group of soldiers that left Panola County, my half-brother, for World War One. And he told me some things about it, but he never gave me the list of men except his two buddies that went with him. And that gave me 3 of the first 10 that went. My brother was F.D. Waldrop, and his two friends were Barney Waldrop and Walter Woods, all of them from the Brooks community area. Mm-hmm. Well, I couldn't find who the others were, and this young lady came in a few days ago and told me that her father was one of the early ones, and that she would come back and give us more information. And she came back yesterday. Now, this is Doretha Gulley, she used to be. She's a Cane now, and lives at Bossier City, Louisiana. So she came over yesterday with a couple of her cousins that live in the area, and brought the packet of letters and the official documents for her father, and it makes an exciting story. And I said, would you let us talk about that on the radio in the morning on the television cable? And she said, oh yes, he would be honored if he were here now to have this done. So with her permission, Doretha Gulley Kane shared this material with us, and it's about her father, LuAllen Gulley, a brother to Marvin Gulley, an uncle to William and Gertrude Hill and all of this group. Okay, this is our source where it came directly, and this is the set of letters that he wrote home from the day he left Carthage. Now, he didn't write every day, but at first he wrote real regularly, and then when he got to Europe, he wrote longer apart with his letters. But she even brought the little notepad that he kept in his pocket with notes that he made, and shared it with us. And so I thought his story was certainly worth telling, and maybe it will inspire some others to bring the stories of their parents who served. Now, we had here last year the living ones from World War I, as many as they could get together for Armistice Day on the square. And at that time I wrote about it, and they named the ones that were still living in this county. But I was trying to get a lot more of them, and still have not succeeded in doing that. But maybe people just have not gotten around to it, and we do want them in the museum, to honor them in the museum. So we have LuAllen Gulley's records from greetings from the President. His President of the United States greeting dated April the 25th, 1918. And they left Carthage, and I had already found in the newspaper files that they had a party for them here the night before. And they gave them little comfort bags, they called them, that the ladies had made. I mentioned this once before. Well, they left on the morning train a little after 8 o'clock on a Friday morning. And they got to San Antonio, which was the Camp Travis is where they finally went. But Fort Sam Houston and San Antonio is where they got to a Saturday afternoon about 3:30. Well, in other words, they were on the train between here and San Antonio from 8 o'clock Friday morning until 3:30 Saturday evening. And he told all of that, and that the Panola County boys, and he never named more than just one or two at a time. He was with J.B. Baker. Now, J.B. Baker is from Galloway, down the east side of the county. And he was with him all the way, all through the war, apparently. And all of this these official documents, we have them even when they landed in England. Of course, he goes through his training in the States, and that training lasted from April when he was. But now listen at this short time, from April when he enlisted to let's see, he got to Europe, to England in about 3 months. That was a pretty short time for training, but. They had this letter from King George to all the American soldiers, thanking them for coming, and that he wished he could shake the hand of everyone because in joining the Allies together, the Allies would make this a safer world. And of course, everybody thought this was the war to end wars. This was World War I. And his descriptions in his letters do not tell much because they were highly censored. And he was first, of course, in England, then he was in France, and he couldn't ever tell exactly where he was, but he was real good to write. I think it's amazing, and his mother had kept all of his letters. There's just a big packet of them. And he just little trivial things about all he could tell. But he did keep up with that, and he kept saying, I'm fine, and he didn't tell the terrors of war. One letter he did write to his brother, and that's Marvin, and he says, I'll tell you details when I get home. And he just barely mentioned that it hadn't been any picnic, But his experience all the way through, he'd say, Panola County boys are still together. I saw Panola County boys today, and Jay Baker's still with me, and all of this sort of thing. And you'd be surprised that they could stay together. And, they were foot soldiers. This was infantry. And he did mention a time or two, he couldn't tell where, but he's in the trenches. And after the war was over, he told that he went over the top 4 times and never got a scratch. Well, the tragic thing about it was that he was ready to go over again. He was in the trench right on the front line when the armistice was signed. And that push, of course, was canceled. But he hadn't had a scratch. He'd just been so fortunate, and though they'd had a hard time, he hadn't been hurt. And this was November the 11th, as you know, that the armistice was signed. All right, naturally, the war was over. They wanted to come home, but there they were in Europe, and there were no planes to bring them home. It was slow passage on a ship across the ocean. And his letters after that would largely say we marched so much, and they kept them in training, but there was nothing to do. And they were bored, of course. And he put in for a leave to go to France, but he didn't get it for a while. Finally, he did go to France. But I believe his trip to back to France, from Germany back to France, was after he got wounded. And he didn't get wounded during the war. He got wounded after it was over. This Armistice Day on November the 11th ended the war, except cleaning up, and getting prisoners freed and back to where they belong and everything. And the soldiers began to be bored and want to go home. Well, of course, they had to keep them doing something, I guess. And so they'd have to march, and they went on 3-day hikes and all this sort of thing, anything, I guess, to keep them busy. And it was during this time that another guy from another company, a young man, was buzzing around on a motorcycle, showing out. I think he'd had a few drinks, perhaps. This daughter of LuAllen Gulley said he was drunk.
Referring to the one that was riding the motorcycle.
Riding the motorcycle. And they were marching, and he ran into LuAllen and broke his leg between his knee and his hip. A critical break. Now, this happened in the spring, let's say. I think it happened in, right at the 1st of April. And the rest of his time was in hospitals. And in this little notebook, one place he says, a certain day, they put ice tongs in my leg. It was metal, I'm sure. And then a few days after, it didn't work, and they took them out. Medicine wasn't what it is now.
No.
And he had surgery on that leg in Germany. He was in the hospital. Now, it was very interesting to me to see the pictures of his nurses, and he did say they were good to him at the hospital, but they didn't, that's not, here are the pictures of the hospital right here. Here he is. This is after he got his uniform.
Okay, let me hold that, and maybe they can see it on the cable.
These were little Kodak pictures, and this one I believe was from a studio. And this is his hiking uniform, and there he is.
They wear you forget about the spats and leggings that they would wear, as well as the.
They look very strange.
A helmet that.
But now then, look at this hospital scene here.
Okay.
All right, after here he is in his harness in the hospital in Germany. Here he is in bed, and this is the costume for the nurses. I thought all that was just real interesting.
Yeah.
And here he was hooked up to all this stuff for not just a few days, but for weeks and weeks and weeks. And he didn't tell how painful it was until after he was home. And actually, he finally got transferred to Brest, France, to a really fine hospital. And they put him in a cast. And when he finally got home, now let's see, I have the date somewhere that he finally got home. He got his leg broken on March the 31st. I said about April 1st. It's close to April the 1st. And he finally got home in July to New York. That long he'd been in the hospitals in Europe. And he came home on the service ship George Washington. It was a shipload of wounded men. And President Wilson and his wife and daughter were on the ship with him. And it took 7 days to cross. And that was a fine ship. And it took 7 days to cross, so he had the opportunity to hear President Wilson and perhaps shake his hand, because he visited them all on the ship, and his wife and daughter did also. And he got to New York City and was in the hospital in New York until they managed for his transfer to Texas. And they finally sent him back to San Antonio to the Veterans Hospital there. Now this was in July. And he was still hospitalized, and they in a heavy cast, and he had lost about 35 or 40 pounds in weight and was carrying that heavy cast around. And it was December before they got that cast off. Now that meant from April 1, April 3rd, I think, is when he really was entered in the hospital, till December. And he told in this little notebook pad that he had in his pocket, that he finally got compensation for 1 year at $20 a month. And he had a leg. His daughter told me yesterday that he was crippled the rest of his life, that leg was 3 or 4 inches shorter than the other. They'd done so much to it, they had redone it and redone it, and it had drawn up shorter in the healing process, the bone. And so he was crippled the rest of his life. But he does say in this, and I was glad to find that, I know we've nearly run out of time, I was glad to find his notes as he recounted his experiences. He went back the next fall he got home in 1919. In December, he came home, was home for Christmas in December 1919. And you see, the armistice had been signed in November 1918, and he didn't actually get home until December 1919. And he added a note saying that in November 1920, he entered school on a federal loan at A&M University.
Is that right?
And this little note was in his notebook. And I thought, if anybody ever deserved a chance to, to get a little more education,
certainly,
at government expense, he certainly did. Here he was, just ready to come home at the end of the war and get slain practically. But some of the names that he did give are a help to us because we're trying to get names. He mentioned repeatedly William Devlin from this county, and Judd Hill he mentioned, and he'd say, I saw the Panola County boys today, and these are boys that he mentioned at one time or another. J.B. Baker was his buddy, and he's a Panola Countyan. Dave Byrne, Henry Gulley, he mentioned him, but he wasn't with him, but Henry Gulley did go. That was his brother. He did go to the Army because he mentioned him in his letters. And Arthur Leggett. These are names that he mentioned. And now my brother had told me that he was one of those early ones. I knew because he held his lieutenant's rating in the reserve from World War I to World War II and was called back in. My brother was in World War II. And he still remembered the things of World War I, and he would talk about them. But he has since is deceased, and I couldn't get any last-minute news from him on what he remembered. But at any rate, he had named himself and 2 more. So you see, we're getting a few.
Right.
Now, I do have a newspaper that's just all to pieces. It will hardly hold together in hands. That gives the ones who had to be enlisted, but they weren't called. But you didn't know which ones were called up. There were thousands that were enlisted that weren't called up. You see, and we were trying to find the ones that were called up. Now these papers that the daughter has, the Mrs. Kane has, gives his officers congratulations to them after the armistice. He boasts about the whole company and how they have worked, and then here are his discharge papers, the whole thing, just as official from the greetings from the president all the way to the discharge, and through some tough times, the complete circle. That war is, like we all know, bad stuff, and he suffered bad stuff. And the others did too. And of course that war didn't end all wars as we thought it would. No. But it was such a pioneer war in comparison to today's warfare. We have to find a way to keep from doing it, to having wars. But they killed a lot of them then. A lot of them were war casualties. And of course we're buried over there. many of them. And so we give tribute then to LuAllen Gulley, who has lots of kinfolks on the east side of this county, and a lot of Gulleys. This is William Gulley's uncle, and there's a big family of them, Marvin Gulley's family.
You bet. Well, very good. This is quite interesting to bring back and touch back into. We've done World War II. Now we're going in and touching on World War I. And anyone that would have any information on any of these people named, I'm sure that you would welcome it with open arms.
We're going to have a place to sign up any names that we haven't found, that people who come to the museum will know about, so we can make a growing list of the servicemen of the different wars.
And don't forget the 15th of October.
True.
Where we have our celebration of the 100th anniversary of our restored jail.
Going to be a biggie.
Which is our Genealogical and Historical Association library.
Right.
I say old jail, and for those people that may not register exactly what we're talking, y'all call it Old Red? Is that? Did I?
Yeah, they call it Old Red because the brick were redder at the beginning than they are now. So yes, the newsletter is Old Red Review.
I see.
And the members have done this because they wanted a sort of a byword for it.
Well, a lot of activities come. We'll have a chance to visit again before the governor arrives.
You're right. Next
so
week.
I'm sure we'll have all the last-minute details because times change and plans change when you're dealing with the high-ranking politicians.
And they are scheduling her real tight. I hope they don't wear her out.
I understand from my sources that we're going to have a keynote address here, which is going to make it much more important than one thing.
I think she has a lot to tell us. I think she has a lot to tell us. And she is making this same a presentation in several places. In fact, I think she's going to stump the state. And we're early in the trip.
Very good.
So we have a chance to size it up before we vote on these amendments.
Very good. We have about a minute. Anything else that you'd like to?
Well, I appreciate your cooperation with us through all of this because you have been a big help to us. You've been a big help to us, and we appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
Our community has pushed us on. We couldn't have done this without it. And people still are just mystified that we've accomplished it in the length of time we have. Ordinarily, they consider one room at a time in restoring an old building, and people that are acquainted with what goes into restoration of such a thing would consider 20 years not too much to count on. Of course, we'll be doing a little fixing up all along to take care of the building now. And we have signed a 99-year lease. And if those of us that laid the first brick, so to speak, aren't here, some others will be taking care of it right on, because we have built and are continuing to build records of our ancestors that will be here for 100 years.
Well, if I can quote a banker friend of mine, that you will be here when it's time to renew the 99-year lease.
Right. He said that, and I said you better count on it.
Thank you for being with us today. We look forward to all of our activities coming up in the weeks to come.
Busy time in October.
Oh, it's an exciting time, time.
Yes.
Thank you for being with us. And
thank you.